WOVU LP, Cleveland.
This is Open Door with Vince Robinson. In-depth conversations with people who are making a difference in the lives of others here and around the world. Culture is at the heart of who you are. Know your culture, find yourself.
Grand dawning, great rising, Cleveland,
Robinson.
Ohio, and the rest of planet Earth. Welcome to another edition of Open Door with Vince Robinson. I just have the occasion to have a guest who I have known for several years. I have known him as an entrepreneur and as an inventor or an innovator, whichever you prefer. But he also describes himself as a visualist, and he has a history of a writer as well. I'm very pleased to welcome to Open Door Mr. Phil Davis. Phil Davis, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing fine, my brother. How you doing, Vince?
I'm doing excellent. Now, if you hear the name Phil, you may associate it with something called Phil the Fire, which was a restaurant that he had in a few different locations in the Cleveland area. People raved about the waffles. They raved about the chicken. There were probably some other things that you were famous for, but most people probably know you as that. I happen to know you as an inventor because on a previous show that I was involved in as a director, you appeared as a guest and you had a product called, I think it was called Fun and Fresh. It was deodorant.
Oh my gosh, Vince, we're going way back.
I'm going way back. And then a couple of other inventions, one of which I actually had and got stolen from me, which I was really kind of bummed about because it was a great invention. And I'll let you spill the beans on that. But let's start with your history. You know, many people who I interview are folks who have been Clevelanders for their entire lives. I don't know if that applies to you, but if people are interested, just let us know how you came up.
Well, I came up. I'm born and bred in Cleveland. Started off in the Carver Projects, and then moved to Mount Pleasant neighborhood back in the mid '60s with my family. And I went through the Cleveland public school system, starting with George Washington Carver, Corlett, Harvey Rice, Miles Elementary, Alexander Hamilton, South High, and then I spread my wings and went to Stanford undergrad, came back for a minute, and then I went to the University of Virginia Law School for 1 year, realized I didn't want to be a lawyer, and then I switched over to the MBA program, got my MBA from the Darden School of Business, came back to Cleveland, and moved to Boston for a minute, lived there for about 18 months. And then I came back in '88. And that's when I really started kicking into the Fun and Fresh and some other iterations of my entrepreneurial endeavors and creativity. And then now I currently live in Akron and Fairlawn, not too far from Cleveland. So that's my brief biography. But I'm definitely Cleveland born and bred.
I appreciate it, man. You know, I'm reflecting on an event that I went to a few weeks ago, and a good friend of mine, his name is Fred Wheat. Fred was, among other things, he was like a band leader at Leo's Casino at the age of 19. And
Wow.
He was also a student at Kent State University. And so he was actually doing double duty going back and forth on the weekends. But someone asked him about his history. And he, as a child, he probably moved about 12 or 13 times. And he told us every single time before he got to 19. So I appreciate that. When Fred hears this, he's going to have a fit. But hey, I'm just reflecting. I have to ask you, Phil, you went to places like Boston and Stanford and so forth and so on. What kept you coming back to Cleveland?
Well, you know, I was a boomerang before boomeranging became a thing. It's something about Cleveland. It is the Four Seasons, of course. Everybody loves the Four Seasons, even though we complain about the winter. But it was home, familiarity, connections. And plus, I always felt that if I was going to plant my roots, I wanted to do it in such a way that I felt that I could be in a place where I could have an impact and that I think Marvin McNichol said it best. Cleveland is just big enough where you can wrap your arms around a situation and you can feel embraced by people. And I'll go into details later, but that's exactly what happened with Fill the Fire. It was big enough where people came from all over the city and the surrounding area, Northeast Ohio. And even after it closed, people still come up to me and say, "Hey, aren't you Fill the Fire, man? When are you going to reopen?" And that's the feeling that I could not have gotten had I been in a bigger city, Chicago, Boston, LA, Atlanta. But in Cleveland, again, they're big enough. The city is big enough to allow you to do something like that and set the world on fire with a new restaurant concept. But at the end, they can also embrace you, and people still feel that connection to me, which I'm honored by, because people still, to this day, 20 years later, after I opened up Fill the Fire the first time, people still remind me that they ate at my restaurant, and that's always a wonderful feeling. But Vince, I could not have gotten that in any other city except Cleveland.
I have to ask you as well, what was the inspiration behind the name of your restaurant?
It was real easy. Back in the day, people Bryson had that song, Fill the Fire. I want to feel the fire, yeah.
Yeah.
And so feel the fire and fill the fire. It just made sense. I heard somebody make a play on it. I was like, wait a minute, I'm Phil. And so I put it up, I kid you not, outside my dorm room at Stanford. I put it, Fill the Fire. This is the beginning of my sophomore year. And by the end of my sophomore year, Vince, nobody on campus called me Phil Davis or Phil. People called me either Fill the Fire, or just Fire. And that went on when I came back for the senior reunion. That's how people remembered me. And it's something about that name. People laugh, they get a chuckle. And so once it stuck at Stanford, it never left me. And so I figured if people could remember for 10 years from Stanford, that they would remember it easily in Cleveland. And I was lucky enough that it did work that way. People still remember the name.
Well,
And the food.
Okay. It's really interesting, and I don't think anything happens by coincidence. But I was on Instagram today, and I was checking my messages, and then I ran across a video. And who was it but Peabo Bryson? And he was singing that song, but it was a contemporary Peabo Bryson. It wasn't the Peabo from back in the day. And it was a very short clip, but he was singing that song with so much passion and so much emotion. I think it's really kind of kismet that people at some point were calling you Fire for short, because it just seems as though you have so much energy and you've done so many things. Before we leave the Fill the Fire, paradigm, can you talk about which of the three locations that I recall was your favorite? Because I remember there was one on Shaker Square, there was one downtown, and then you had the one that was out in Woodmere or
Beechwood.
Beechwood.
It's actually Beechwood on Orange Place, right there, 271 in Chagrin.
Yeah.
That's a hard question, because actually, I started in the basement of the Civic. And that's where Fill the Fire actually became a reality. That's when I was able to actualize the concept. We did that all day buffet in the basement of the Civic. And we had entertainment. We had every Sunday we had that all you could eat brunch. And it was an amazing experience, because right before things blew up, I got a call from the food editor at the Plain Dealer and said, "Hey, Phil, I heard about, Fill the Fire. I'm coming this Sunday." And the week before, Vince, I had literally spent everything. Only 30 people came. I was like, okay, this is not going to happen. I tried 6 consecutive weeks. And after I got that call from the writer at the Plain Dealer, a week after that story ran on July 4th, 2002, 2001, after 2001, I tried to serve 300 people, and we had lines, and that was the beginning of Fill the Fire. That was the true genesis of it when I finally got that phone call from the food editor, the food writer. John Long was his name. But my point is, so to go from there to Shaker Square was a blast. And I have probably the fondest memory because of just the intimacy of the space. It was really small. It was the old reason why making the connections, learning the history of the space, being close to Shaker Square. So if I think about it, it was that intimacy, the history, the connection, the fact that I kid you not, Vince, in 2002 when we opened, at some point in that year, bar none, we had the hottest restaurant in Cleveland. I mean, on Mother's Day, people waited 3 hours. It did not budge for the food. And it always warms my heart that people were willing to do that for something that I started. And I always told my staff that we didn't sell food at Fill the Fire. We sold memories. And the fact that we created so many memories and connected so many people with the memories of their childhood or their family reunions by simply presenting good food that was made with love based on food that I grew up on, that I made sure every day hit its quality marks to make sure that we presented people with food at a good price. That was, I guess, to answer your question, I apologize for being so long-winded, but if I had to pick a spot, it would probably be Shaker Square just because of the intimacy and all the connections that were made for so many people. It was really special, just special.
So you went and you got an MBA, and then you come to Cleveland and you become a restaurateur. Was that the path that you had planned for yourself, or was it just something
absolutely.
that just happened?
Oh gosh, Vince, no, not at all. When I came back, that's my first thing I did. I came back to Cleveland from Boston with Fun and Fresh in tow. And so I was doing the children's deodorant, the first deodorant for kids 7 to 12. I was on the cover of USA Today in the early 90s. I was on the Wall Street Journal doing lots of things like that. So I thought I was headed down the path of children's deodorant and children's hygiene. But then Walmart said, hey, Phil, your product is selling, just not fast enough. And once we lost Walmart as an account, things didn't work out. So that was the path that I was going to take, that was going to be what I had focused on. But during the 90s, I was also baking pies, my double butter peach cobbler and things like that. And so at one point we were going to fight parties, and I used to bring the double butter peach cobbler to the fight party until one day this guy named Curtis Smitty called me and said, hey, Phil, we need another double butter peach cobbler for this fight party. I said, man, y'all got to pay for this. He said, how much? I said, well, it's X. I forget how much I charged. He said, okay. And I said, really? He said, yeah. And so that got me into thinking, okay, people are willing to pay for the food that I make. So then I started doing chicken and waffles parties around the city amongst friends. And in fact, there's for many, many years, a guy named Alvin Tinker had a chicken and waffles party in his home in Bedford. But that started as one of my chicken and waffles party at his house. And so that's how I got it. So eventually in 2001, after my daughter was born, I was like, okay, I gotta try to make this happen. And that's how it got. So when I came back from Boston to Cleveland, Fill the Fire as a restaurant was only just something that was barely a thought in the back of my mind. I was focused on Fun and Fresh, but the more I did it, the more the chicken and waffles parties, people buying the desserts, it started to say, okay, wait a minute, this might be something.
Yeah.
So that's how.
Well, indeed it was. I just so happens that I'm plant-based, so I never had the pleasure of having the chicken or the waffles, but I think I did have some catfish maybe once or twice at Fill the Fire. We're going to talk more about your restaurant, and we're also going to talk about the products and your innovations when we return. This is Open Door with Vince Robinson on 95.9 FM WOVU, Burton Bell Carr Community Radio. My guest is Visualist, entrepreneur, innovator, and writer Phil Davis. We'll be right back.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
We're back. Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest, Phil Davis, innovator, visualist, entrepreneur, writer, and former owner of Fill the Fire, restaurant that had, I guess maybe 4 incarnations if you want to count the Civic. And I do remember vividly people talking about it, and it's really amazing what happens when you get that press and everybody finds out about it. That resulted in lines of 300 folks wrapped around Mayfield and Lee to get into to get some of that good stuff. Fun and Fresh. You mentioned that it wasn't selling as much as you would have liked, or as much as Walmart would have liked. What was your, I guess, idea when you created that product?
Well, that was, necessity is the mother of invention, and frustration is the father of innovation. And so Fun and Fresh came about because I had bumped into my niece. She was about 8 years old, and my niece being 8 years old, she was growing, and hormones, and I just mean that she was just growing, and she had a body odor that was just natural for kids playing a lot. And I just asked my brother, I just said, hey, what would you think of a deodorant for Laverne? He said, do you have some? I was like, no, but I can make some. And so the idea that there was my niece who was 8 years old might have been self-conscious and not realizing, because she's just an 8-year-old child. And my brother saying that he as a parent was concerned. And I said, well, I think I can put 2 and 2 together. And I just literally started researching it and trying to find out contract manufacturers, trying different products myself, trying to find out who might be able to make it. So that was in 87, when I was living in Boston, and when I came back in 88, I already had to Cleveland in 88, I had Kmart as the first retailer. And that's when Kmart was actually bigger than Walmart as the first retailer that was going to give Fun and Fresh a shot. So that's how it started. It just was the situation where my brother was frustrated as a parent, the necessity that as a young girl growing and not being aware of anything, that there might be an aluminum-free product that could help her address the body odor coming from her underarms, which is just a natural thing. There's nothing unnatural about it. It's just that there wasn't anything that was available that parents could use worry-free. And that's the innovation that I brought to the table. It's not just the fact that we had a deodorant specifically targeted towards preteen kids, 7 to 12, but it was also that it was aluminum-free. It didn't have any aluminum zirconium or aluminum chlorohydrate, which actually clogs your pores. And by clogging your pores, you don't get the sweat, so you don't have the bacteria and the metabolism of the bacteria, which results in the odor. So we eliminated all of that, but we did it without using aluminum. So we had 2 things going for us. And that's what caught the attention of Kmart, then eventually Walmart and Revco and Target. And at one point, Vince, we had it in 10,000 stores across the country, but it just was happening in bits and pieces. And we, at that time, back in the early 90s, no one would ever think to put venture capital dollars behind it, even though there was supposedly a Black venture capital fund. When I told them that I wanted to get funding, they all laughed because they said, well, nobody's going to buy a deodorant for children. And even though we had a track record at Walmart, I still was never able to get the critical funding that we needed to go to the next level. But that's, that was then. But I was on the cover of USA Today as a result of bringing the deodorant for kids. I was quoted several times, and a story was written about me and the product in the Wall Street Journal. Several local stories, national stories. So that innovation did garner a lot of attention. And I had at one time, I had a stack of letters from kids and parents from all over the country thanking me for that product. And again, even though it didn't go to the next level, for those kids that it did touch, it changed the lives of some of those kids because they were able to finally use a product without concern, and then help them address a problem that they knew that they needed to confront, but do it in such a way that it was for them without being condescending or judgmental, So I feel really, really good about that.
Yes. Well, you answered the next question, and that was why your brother didn't just go to the store and buy some regular deodorant. But I would have to imagine that we're kind of in a different world today. I mean, I'm one of those people who doesn't use deodorant that has aluminum or all those other chemicals in them. I try to use as much natural stuff as I can. So I'd have to imagine that the market for that has expanded. But then that means also that there's probably a lot of competition too.
Oh, there are several deodorant for kids now. Teen Spirit came after us, and of course, that was one of the things that knocked us out. There was a brand called Menon. They launched Teen Spirit. And in fact, I forget the name of the grunge metal group. They had a song, "Smells Like Teen Spirit." So after we launched Fun and Fresh, along comes Menon's Teen Spirit, and they took over the shelf space that we had. So even though it was aluminum based, they still had the power and the money to kick us off the shelf. And that was our undoing, is that we pioneered the space, but somebody else came in and took it over, who had a lot more money and a lot more muscle with the likes of Walmart and the other retailers.
Yeah, well, it came into my headspace. The name of the group was Nirvana. And
Nirvana, yes.
Yeah, and
yes.
Kurt Cobain.
Cobain.
Yeah,
Yes.
so, yeah. I never was a Nirvana fan. Maybe that's why. Okay. So you were an inventor back in the 80s. You came up with that product, and then you were on our show with that, and it was a show that was produced at what was then Cable 9, which is now Community Focus. And then you came back, and you had it was a kind of a mini microwave that you could use to warm up your shaving cream. Tell us about that product.
Okay, so that product you're referring to is the iWave Cube. And that was a product that was made in China. I had to travel to China several times. But the inspiration for that was exactly as you said, that I was looking for a way to warm up a towel so that I could give myself a hot towel treatment. But and I said, well, if I had a microwave in the bathroom, that would be really, really cool. And I was like, wait a minute. I said, a microwave could fit right here on this shelf. I was like, okay, can I get a microwave? And then I just went through the same process that I went through to do children's deodorant. I started researching. I started making phone calls, and this was in 2006. And I spent the year trying to find a manufacturer. I finally found one in China. I put it all together. I worked with a organization called Magnet that helped me understand that structurally it was possible to do a cubic foot, 12 by 12 by 12 microwave. Lots of behind the stories, or there's a big backstory behind it. But once I realized I could do it, I was working at UPS in sales, and I got a call from one of my good buddies at Stanford and said, "Hey, I understand you got an idea. Let me hear it." And I pitched the iWave Cube to him, and it wasn't called back, but I just told him about this. He said, "Hey, let's try it." And I quit my job in January 2007, immediately flew to Vegas to meet the people from China. And then a couple of weeks later, I was on my first trip to China. And by the end of 2007, I had the working model. In 2008, we were in Sharper Image. I don't know if you remember that company. Mm-hmm. They used to have stores. They used to be a great catalog that people would find in their pockets in their airline seats. And they were so excited about the iWave Cube Vince that they said in 2008, "Oh, Phil, we love it. We're going to place the order for 10,000, which would have been worth about $1 million." Vince, I was on top of the world. But then around March or April of 2008, this little thing called Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, the collapse of those two entities sort of, sent shockwaves through the world. And after the collapse of Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, this was March of 2008, by August of 2008, Sharper Image, a multi-billion-dollar company, was wiped off the face of the earth. Linens and things, we had a big order with linens and things, wiped off the face of the earth because of the credit collapse in the financial system. People don't remember how bad 2008 was, but it was bad. I mean, the shock waves through that. I mean, it killed so many things in the process. It was like a nuclear explosion. It decimated so many companies and the livelihoods of so many people. And unfortunately, in 2008, my world was quickly changing because it went from having a purchase order for $1 million to what do I do now? But for the time that it got on there, we got a lot of great reviews. Carrie Underwood, a country western pop music star, picked as one of the 5 favorite things in the world she could not live without was my microwave, the iWave Cube. We were able to do some other things, but nothing compared to what we were trying to do with sharper image and linens and things. But it was something that I got my first patent. It was a design patent. I'd never been awarded a patent, and that was the first time I felt comfortable calling myself an inventor. And because I actually had I had the receipts, I had the actual patent award from the USPTO. So that was the iWave Cube. It was on the Today Show. It was given away as a prize on The Price is Right. So lots of little things, but again, part of the challenge when you're doing something where you have this big vision is that you got to have the wherewithal to withstand some of the fluctuations in the marketplace. But the thing is that while I had the fortitude to withstand it, my manufacturer in China was not feeling the same thing because we weren't moving the units that we thought we were going to move because after Sharper Image collapse, it was just basically onesies and twosies. So that's what happened there. That's the backstory. But in terms of taking something that was literally, it's just an idea. I knew nothing about microwave technology, but being able to take that idea, that concept, nurture it, and bring it to fruition. Travel to China several times. I'd never been to China before. Seeing Hong Kong and just the beauty of the Hong Kong harbor and eating wonderful, fresh Chinese food. It was a wonderful, wonderful. I went to the Forbidden City. I went to Beijing. Just so many wonderful things came out of one idea, and that was to make a portable personal microwave. But it was a great ride. Just did not materialize the financial returns needed.
Yes. Unfortunate, but I'm sure that you probably learned a lot from that experience and it didn't deter you from inventing. So then you came up with another invention and it got quite a bit of shine. I became an owner of one of those products, but
yes,
it was liberated from my garage from someone. I wish, and I've always wanted to get my hands on another one. We're going to talk about that when we return. This is Open Door with Vince Robinson on 95.9 FM WOVU, Burton Belcar Community Radio. We'll be back with Phil Davis after this.
Koshin Meats is a family-owned business that has served the Cleveland area for over a century. Their staff can help you select specialty cuts of beef, poultry, pork, and other items you may not find in an ordinary grocery store like frog legs or wild jerky. They also offer a wide variety of breads, deli meats, cheeses, spices, and other specialty products. Conveniently located at 4058 St. Clair Avenue near East 41st Street, Koshin Meats is the place to go for all your cuisine needs. Call 216-881-7677 for more info or visit KoshinMeats.com. This message was brought to you by Koshin Meats and Marketplace and WOVU 95.9 FM, Our Voices United, Burton Belcar Community Radio.
Hi, this is Gerard Amir Shakir, and you're listening to 95.9 FM, Our Voices United, Burton Belcar Community Radio.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest is inventor, innovator, Phil Davis. He's also an entrepreneur and writer and a visualist, and we'll dig into what the Visualist is. But we're talking about products that he's invented. He's already mentioned two. The third one that I want to bring up is this invention that would be quite handy right now because it is winter in Cleveland. It's called the Pushel. And it was a very innovative design. I can remember seeing the video of you and your daughter using it in the driveway, and I saw it. I was like, wow, I have a fairly small driveway, but I used it a couple of times. It was a breeze, and I didn't want to use any other snow shovel but the Pushel. Talk to us about the creation of that product.
Well, the blueprint for inventing is the same thing. If there's a problem, what you try to do is offer dots towards the solution of that problem. If you put up enough dots and you connect those dots, eventually what's left is the product or service that you believe can help solve the problem. You have to be solving a problem or offering a better way to do something in your journey for inventing and innovation. And for me, it was the fact that it was a very heavy snowfall, and I went out and shoveled the snow, and I was like, man, lifting all that snow, Vince, I was worn out, and it literally, I said, there's got to be a better way. And I started playing with different designs, and I contacted another manufacturer of garden tools in China. I said, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Do you think you can help me out? We traded ideas, pictures, and then they sent me a sample. And I was like, yeah, but can you do this? And then they finally sent me one. I put it down, and I told them to me, I said, yes, this is it. And then you saw the video of Makai, who was 12 at the time, so that's 11 years ago. She cleared a 50-foot, 60-foot driveway that was covered in 2 to 3 inches of snow by herself in minutes. And I knew at that point that it was good. And I got it made. I was actually on QVC presenting the Pushel, but timing is everything. For reasons that still are a mystery to me, the buyer at QVC who's putting me on delayed my presentation until March. And nobody wants to talk about snow in March. Vince, I didn't want to talk about snow in March to push the Pushel, but that's what they gave me. And the thing about it, if they had put me on a week before, there was a major snowstorm in Philadelphia on the East Coast that in fact, the mayor of Philadelphia said, please don't shovel snow. Please find a way to push the snow away. That way you don't strain your back or your heart or sustain injury. Then it would have been literally the perfect storm. But for some inexplicable reason, I just don't get it. But I do know the reason. But he decided to push me off into March. But the product worked. I got 2 more patents, a utility patent this time, which was different than a design patent. And I was able to move forward with that. But in fact, we had it at the Shaker Hardware store, which unfortunately is no longer there. But it was when people would come in, people came from a few places, but Shaker Hardware being one store, you're only going to sell so many. But we did sell some, and people like you were very pleased with it. I get people who were able to get their hands on one who contact me every now and again, say they still use it. And so that makes me feel good. And part of the lessons, you talked about lessons in the last segment, is that, when you do something, you can't do it for the money. You have to do it because you believe that what you're doing and what you're offering is going to help people in some kind of way, whether big or small. That's why you do it. Your hope is that there is an ROI. I mean, we're in business to make money. But the fact that those products or services did not make money is disappointing, but it's not defining. I think, as you pointed out, I'm not defined by the lack of success, but I am encouraged by the fact that I've developed sort of my own internal system of innovation and in inventing, because a part of it, the reason why I call myself a visualist is because I'm kind of fortunate that I am oftentimes able to see things before others do. And but that's only because I go through the process of connecting those dots that I see, that I offer as this is a possible solution. This is a possible solution. When I start connecting the dots, what's left is the solution, whether it's fun and fresh or whether it's Fill the Fire or the iWave Cube or the Pushel, all those spring forth from the same basic ecosystem of trying to connect dots and bring something forward. So I know that my system works, and eventually that there will be a product where the inventiveness, the creativity will match the financial returns. In fact, I am working on something right now, but again, it's in that process, it's in that phase where we're going through just making sure that everything looks good, doesn't make sense, but the system that I put in place, the protocols and things that I do in terms of going to through invention and creation are the same, and that's the lesson that I've learned that at this tender age. That it works. And so I know that there are a couple more ideas that I plan to bring to fruition.
Okay. It seems as though you're reading my mind because you answered the question before I ask it. So I'm going to ask this question. After you had the experience with the Pushel, what was your pivot?
That's a great question. So the pivot after the Pushel was doing some soul searching. There's no shame in the game to figure, okay, what did I learn? What did I do right? And then I began to I did some other things while I was doing the searching. I drove for Uber. I worked at Amazon. Let's see, what else did I do? I moved to Akron to become the general manager for a restaurant called Au Bon Pain, which was the Panera before Panera became Panera, coffee sandwich shop. I did that. So I moved to Akron to pursue that. And so the part of the process in terms of the pivot was not to panic and to think that that this was the defining moment, because it didn't give me the financial returns that I wanted, that was necessarily the end. Was I disappointed? Absolutely. But I had to give myself enough space, enough grace to say, okay, let's think about this. Let's go through this. And so while I was doing that, I was just basically, as I said, I drove for Uber for 2 years straight and met a lot of interesting people, got a chance to talk to people about what they did and, learned a lot. I had some very, very interesting stories. If we had an hour to talk about my years as an Uber driver, where I literally was a bartender behind the wheel of a car, people would tell me their stories and ask me questions and ask my opinion, ask for advice. I could fill an hour's worth of some of the stories that would give you eye-popping feelings like, wow, that really happened. But in a sense, it was humbling, Vince, because you realize that, you don't know what people are going through. And so given a chance to give people, tell their backstory and understand the challenges that they face and some of the things that they've overcome was actually inspiring. And it was also a chance to reconnect with what I came back to, which was Northeast Ohio. Vince, in 2 years, I saw more of Northeast Ohio in 2 years than I did in the previous 30 or 25 years, whatever it was, 25 plus years. And it was a beautiful thing because I saw everything from wonderful places where people lived in these palatial homes out in Concord. I never even dreamed that Concord would have these palatial mansions, people living, balling out there. But I also saw abject poverty. I picked up drug addicts in my car. I picked up people who were just, one step away from not being in good situations and being able to talk to them. I helped people. I did whatever I could in terms of utilizing that time and space as an Uber driver. So that was probably the pivot, was to give myself a time to think, okay, what do I need to do? And so that gave me a chance to connect again, not only with people, but it gave me a chance to connect with the space that I came back to. So that was my pivot, a chance to connect. And also understand, my daughter was getting older and understanding that father-daughter relationship. And so it was a time of reflection. That was the pivot.
It's interesting because I spent a short period of time as an Uber driver. And as you were describing your experience, the question that I had in my head was, how did you last 2 years? But
Oh, it wasn't easy. I just tell you that I knew that the time was up. By the end of the 2 years, I was exhausted. I mean, I was working really, really hard. I was working sometimes 12 hours a day, 60, 70 hours a week. And one event let me know that it was time to start, pivoting towards something else. But I'm not exaggerating. I was so tired by the end of one day of driving, I hallucinated that I saw Michael Jackson moonwalking in the crosswalk on Van Aken Boulevard. I was like, okay, it's time. This is bananas. This is not good. So I knew it was time, but I had to be on the hustle. I had to be on the grind because I had to make money. And but the sad part about Uber, unfortunately, for people who think about doing the gig economy, is that Uber is nothing but a payday loan against your car. Because I drove close to 200,000 miles on Uber, and that's a lot of miles, and that's just crazy. But as I said, but the upside was able to connect with people. I mean, I met people from all walks of life, connecting with Northeast Ohio, and then doing that. So,
okay, well, I'm going to give you an idea, Phil.
What's that?
I think you should write a book about your experience as a driver. You said that you're a writer, so you had those experiences, and I'm sure some of them might be floating around in your memory bank. So that's my contribution to your cause, and I'll give.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well. Here. That's a very good suggestion. I've thought about it, but I wonder, would anybody care? Because it was fascinating. I kid you not, it was a fascinating time.
Oh yeah, I'll share too that I had equally enriching experiences as a driver, but I'm gonna give you my reason why. I picked up a few folks in the flats, and they needed to go somewhere on the near west side. It was probably maybe a 4 or 5 minute ride from downtown. And it was a 5-passenger car, 2 in the front, 3 in the back, and 4 guys got in the car.
Oh my God.
And then they got out the car, slamming doors, didn't give me a tip. It was I was going above and beyond to let 4 guys get into my car. And the disrespect that I got that time was like, okay. And then I thought about the wear and tear that I was putting on my car, and it's like what I was getting from those fares, and then chasing those hot zones. I can't even remember what they called them, but you wanted to get to those zones because you got better pay in those zones.
Right.
By the time you got there, it's no longer.
It disappeared.
Yeah, it's like rug pulls. I'm like, okay, I've had enough of that. So my career as an Uber driver probably lasted all of 2 months, and at that point I had enough. So we're gonna switch gears when we come back because we got some serious talking to do.
Okay.
All right. This is Open Door with Vince Robinson on 95.9 FM, WOVU, Burton Bell Car Community Radio. I'm with Phil Davis. We'll be right back.
Ohio, a new choice for Medicaid is here. Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield. The name you can trust because we're the plan that plans on everything, from 3 a.m. fevers to life-saving medicines. So choose Anthem for your Medicaid plan. Visit anthemohio.com today.
This was brought to you by Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield Insurance and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our voices united. Burton Bell Car Community Radio.
Hi, I'm Candace Wilder from Signal Cleveland, and you're listening to WOVU 95.9 FM, Burton Bell Car Community Radio.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson. I am speaking with an inventor supreme. He's working on something. He can't tell us what it is right yet, but I'm sure that when it does happen, we will hear all about it. Phil, you are known for a lot of things. You have been on social media, and you're quite active. I've had a chance to see some of the things that you posted. A few weeks ago, we were actually at an event regarding a film called God Talk. And it was a representation of a lot of different faiths. And you emerged and asked the question, and you shared with the audience that you are atheist. And as we were having our conversation, I was wondering about the source of your creativity, because you're an inventor. You create things, and sometimes it comes from a place of logic. Sometimes it comes from a place of intuition. You see a need for something. You see a problem that needs to be solved, and then you solve it. I'm just wondering, in terms of your life experience, what your idea of religion has been, and if there was a time when, just based on the fact that you had $1 million deal that just evaporated, and then you had the situation with QVC, and then, you had the situation with Pushel and so forth. Was there anything about that caused you to perhaps change your perspective?
Oh, no, Vince. No, this was actually something that had been germinated in my mind when I was at Stanford back in the late 70s, early 80s. And what happened was it crystallized. I don't know if that metaphor carries over from germination to crystallization, but we'll go with it. But what was, I think, it crystallized was when I was studying in France, and I was traveling from Paris to London. And on the trip over to London, myself and a young white guy from Stanford and two Iranians were in a train car. And to get to the point that we realized that we were two Americans and two Iranians in the same space. And this is at the height of the Iranian-American hostage situation. But when we stripped that all away, and it just happened organically, we didn't do anything to force it. We realized that we were just four young men out to see the world, to see Paris and London and all the wonderful things you want to do when you're 20 and 21. And that was our common bond. It had nothing to do with race, ethnicity, nationality, or religion or faith. And that was our common bond, just four young men out to see the world. And when I got back, two things happened. A friend of mine made the comment that, faith is a function of geography. And I was like, what? And then it dawned on me. I was like, well, yeah. The fact that I'm American, I'm going to have a higher probability of being Christian. And at that time, I was Catholic. And the people that were born in Iran had a higher probability of being Muslim. And so geography plays a big role into that. And then I took a course at Stanford on Christianity and as an institution and as a movement, and not about the religion aspect, but just how it grew from the Middle East into Rome and to Europe and then over to America, just that whole thought. So make a long story short, I eventually realized that wasn't for me. So that was in my early 20s. And the only reason that I held on so long because of the intergenerational transfer of beliefs that had been passed on to me. My father was Catholic, his mother was Catholic, and so I was raised Catholic, catechism and all that stuff. But as I got older, I realized that those bonds didn't hold me, and I was yearning to break free. So that trip to France did a big service to me in terms of enlightening my thoughts about what actually is it to be human on this earth and share it with 8 billion people. And as John Lennon says, I have to imagine a world where there is no religion, there is no faith, there is no heaven, no hell, just that we all are. And so it had nothing to do with any disappointments in business or love. This was just during my early years as a young man. When I wore a younger man's clothes, I had to start thinking, who am I? And it had to go beyond just Rene Descartes saying, I think, therefore I am. What am I thinking? And so I'm thinking based on what was passed on to me, not thinking because this is something that I sought out. So I sought out to break myself away from the religious dogma and doctrine that I had been exposed to, and just to share the world as myself. And for the longest, I never told people that I was atheist. I always sort of couched it in different terms, because particularly in the Black community, people will cast aspersions towards you if you tell them that you're atheist, because immediately they say, well, if you don't believe in God, you must believe in the devil, which makes absolutely no sense. but that's how people think. But I can tell you, in terms of personal disappointment, it had nothing to do with business. But on a personal level, I can tell you how many times love interests, relationships have broken down because I did not share the belief in God, or I did not love the Lord, as one woman said. And even though these women went on to different relationships that didn't work out, even though they were convinced that their husbands loved the Lord. So my experience has been that I believe that I can make a difference by questioning religious dogma, religious thought. Why do we still hold on to Christianity when it was used against us during the slave trade? So I pepper my social media posts with questions. And I do that, and because I think there is a need for us to do some critical thinking about what has been passed on us without question. And then I said it's been passed intergenerationally, and nobody's taking the time to say, pump the brakes, let's stop, let's think about, why do we celebrate this? Why do we do this? Why do we go to church and give our 10% of our money to this or that? So it's a lot of questions that I'm asking in the hopes of trying to have us come to something new.
Yes. Well, I do think that it's important to ask questions. And I think there are a lot of people who have had a common experience in growing up in the church and asking questions that they really had a sincere interest in knowing the answers to. And a lot of times they didn't get answers. They just told, they're just told that's the way it is, and don't question.
Yes. And don't question. Oh my goodness. I mean, Vince, that unfortunately, that's the prevailing thought, is that you don't question. How dare you question God? How dare you question this or that? But, let's even break it down. If you believe in God, God gave you a mind to think. I mean, we're not droids. We are here, and critical thinking is what sustains us. Without critical thinking, we would not have the breakthroughs in science and medicine and engineering and all the wonderful things that we benefit from. It's all because of critical thinking, people asking questions, why? Or as Robert Kennedy once said, I dare to ask, why not? And that's what I do. I mean, there's a through line in terms of what I do as a visualist, as an innovator, as an inventor, and as my critiques and my discussions on Facebook, all the through line is just asking questions. Why do we do this? Why not do this? And so that's sort of how I see myself. As part of my DNA now. It's like a moth to a flame. I just can't help myself.
Yeah. Well, too, aside from religion, if you just look at society in a general sense, we're told what to think, and we're not encouraged to think. We're encouraged to just accept what we're being told. And so many times when you look at what we're being told, so much of it is inaccurate, it's false, it's exploitative, it's used to control and manipulate, and it has no place in terms of truth. One of my frustrations as a communicator is this whole idea of censorship. You could be telling the truth, but then there's a body that's saying it's misinformation or disinformation, when in fact it's just something that they don't want out there because it interrupts their ability to do what they're trying to do. So I'll just ask this too. I remember a few years back you were involved with a podcast. Are you still doing the podcast?
I tried my hand at podcasting. It was called The Happy Atheist. I interviewed 6 other people who had gone from the journey from being theist to atheist. And it was really exciting. Part of it is that there's not a lot of acceptance right now. But I do plan to get back to that because I think it's something that should be explored. I believe firmly that I should not be ostracized from I should have a long-standing invitation to the cookout, even though I'm atheist, because I'm of the community. I'm part of the community. I've helped to enhance the community through my inventions and cultural contributions, whether it's Fill the Fire or, I'm a writer. I wrote a piece in 1988 about the death of a friend that was well received. I think I know it changed some people's lives because I got phone calls about that. So I'm contributing to the culture, but by standing up and saying, okay, I self-identify as atheist, I always look back to make sure that there are no knives sticking out, or protruding from my back, because people tend to get, unfortunately, they get hyped about hearing the word atheist as opposed to understanding what the word atheist actually means, which is mean not believing. It doesn't mean, it's not the reverse, it's not the inverse of God. It's just there's no belief. There's not enough evidence to convince me that that a God exists. And if a God exists, he's either all powerful or not all good, or not all good. I mean, all good, but not all powerful. And in my mind, that's not a God that serves the well-being of 8 billion people on this planet. And so I'd rather go back to, as I said earlier, I'd rather go back to the thought that I'm trying to imagine a world where we're all believing in one another with 8 billion people on this planet. We don't need to believe in something beyond the clouds and the skies. We need to believe in each other, and trying to work to say that, what are our commonalities, what are things we can work on to try to make this world a better place, and has nothing to do with a book that you call sacred or holy or this or that. It has to do with what are our one-on-one interactions, which goes back to the train car ride that I had when I was at Stanford. We were going from Paris to London, and in that one train car ride, we realized that there was a commonality between all of us, regardless of where we had come from. At that moment in time, we were all just 4 young men out to see the world, and it was a beautiful thing. And it didn't last forever, but for that moment, Vince, we felt like we could change the world. But, that wasn't the reality outside of the train car. But I think, at least we have at least I believe that that's something to work to regain that sense that, we can find commonality, and we can drop the pretense of religion and other things. It's just, no, we're 2 human beings. We're a group of human beings. We're a community of human beings. Let's work together to try to make it a better place.
Well, I'll say this, Phil. No matter what your religious philosophy might be, or, whether you believe or know or whatever the case might be, the most important thing is that as beings on this planet, we love each other. And I think love
Absolutely.
goes a long way towards erasing some of the boundaries that we put up between ourselves. We have just a few moments left in the broadcast. I want to give you an opportunity to shout out whatever you need to shout out if you want folks to connect with you.
Well, the first thing, if anybody wants to connect with me, please join me on Facebook at Phil Davis or Phil the Fire. Same thing on The Real Phil the Fire on Instagram. But I just really want people to understand that, the Native Americans have a saying that you climb 3 mountains in life. And I've ascended the 3rd mountain of my 3-mountain life. I'm at the top, and I'm trying to extend the plateau. I'm not headed downhill yet. I'm going to fight to make this plateau last as long as possible. And in that time, I'm hoping some people join me on this journey of exploration. We can explore what else is possible, and we can together, we can invent something that's totally new. And again, but it has nothing to do with pride of authorship. It's just that we can find alternatives that can bring more people together, because I think, unfortunately, religion tends to divide us more than bring us together. I'm looking for a way to bring us together. And I strive to do that every day that I had Phil the Fire, was to bring us together through food. And I'll leave this in closing. My proudest accomplishment as the restaurateur and owner of Phil the Fire was when I got the award from Cleveland Scene magazine, and they said the best food for world peace was at Phil the Fire, because Vince, not only did we have the most popular restaurant in the city of Cleveland in 2002, but we had the most diverse clientele throughout the city. You could find any and everybody sitting down in the same room, sharing, breaking bread, and enjoying themselves, enjoying their families, their friends. And if that's the legacy I leave Cleveland with, then so be it. But that's the one award that I'm most proud of. It's not the silver spoons for best soul food restaurant. No, I got the award for best food for world peace, and that's going to go on my grave marker. because that to me it's gold. It's priceless. I'm so happy to have won that.
All right.
That they chose to describe it that way.
Okay, well, we're going to leave it there, and I want to thank you for being my guest today. And to those
Thank you for having me, Vince.
All right, to those who are listening, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your best day. Peace.